to join us here in a second, but if she doesn't join us, then we'll totally run with it. It's totally fine.
Did you send Leah?
I got it.
Yeah, we sent Leah the invite. She said she's going to be joining here in a second. So, I mean, we could just do like coffee type chatter for just a minute.
Seriously.
We're trying to do like a mug challenge. We want to see everyone's mug.
Nice. Oh, nice. Sweet representation, Erin.
You're welcome. I was trying to keep it real over here.
There you go. Oh, nice. I'm not even going to show mine. I think Dan showed us up earlier too with his IAC mug.
Yeah, Dan did. Wait, what year was yours though, Dan?
Mine's the is this one. These are the best ones. They keep stuff hot for, well, let me check. A little bit warm.
That is such a middle-aged line that people really love. That's all we worry about is how long our beverage holders keep things warm or hot nowadays. Remember back when we were cool and that didn't really matter? Like,
oh no, am I middle-aged now?
I don't know. It's like I get in my truck after work and it's like still hot and I got life conquered. So
it took me about 4 hours into the day till I even got any coffee.
Yeah. Ice is so passe.
And Greg is on his way to town, so he'll be joining us too. I think, are we still waiting on Leah?
Yeah, she said she's hopping on right now. So I just
How about, can I show a video to start us off on a different topic? But I just want to kind of frame a little bit of, you know, it's been a pretty good but a little bit long day of a lot of live streams. I'm very much looking forward to being outside, and I'm going to go do this when we're done. This actually is a Red Lake corn.
Do you want me to start live streaming, Dan, or you want me to wait?
Yeah, we can live stream this.
Okay. Yeah, totally.
Sweet. I'm gonna click go live. Perfect. We are live.
Okay, we're at our last panel for the day, Resiliency through Agriculture, and you know, I just want to give a huge thank you to our audience who has stuck with us all day through a bunch of good conversations, but it's been a lot of information today. We have even more information on the e-learning platform, mightynetworks.com. Just search for Intertribal Agriculture Council, and we've got about 36 different sessions on there of recorded sessions, everything from harvesting birch bark to making birch bark baskets to making elm bark baskets to conservation planning. I'm going to show you here because this is what I'm about to do when we're done. I'm going to go plant some more corn. Yesterday I planted some Red Lake Flint corn. Today I'm going to plant some Mohawk Yellow, but just want to show this video and partially the connection. Resiliency through agriculture is, how do we get back, how do we get people back into gardening, basic growing? How do we get people who are into gardening, who want to scale into small scale commercial production, give them the support, and then scaling up a little bit more? This is part of my personal journey that I've been on of scaling up production. So I'm just going to quick hit play on this video. Scale up production. How do you do it? How do you scale up production in a way that still is respectful to the seeds, to the food, but is respectful to the land and caring for the land? What we're going to talk about today is an approach that I've been working on using a 4-row no-till planter connected to a tractor, and we're going to be planting right into this hay field. This actually was a cover crop mixture. It just was mowed. We're going to plant into it. Today we're planting a Red Lake Flint corn. You can see this corn here. It's a multicolor. It's 8-row, beautiful corn, about 95 days, maybe even a little bit less. But you can see here, this is what it looks like on the ear. We're gonna put some seed into our planter here, each of those 4 rows. Then we're going to drop the planter down, and we're going to do about 4 passes on this field. So we're looking at about 16 rows total, and we'll show you what it looks like.
So, this is just an example of scaling up production. Greg, who's going to be in a minute, brought some equipment up to him last couple of years, and they're getting one of their own walk-behind tractors. But this here took, it took maybe 15, 20 minutes to plant this whole field. Not a huge field, but at 16 rows at, I'd say about at least 100 feet per row. So it's a pretty good amount of corn, and not tilling it up or anything. So, when we talk about resiliency through agriculture, this is one step, one example. I know I posted this last night, and got quite a few tribes that are interested in looking at similar types of equipment. And this is pretty small. Big farmers around here laugh at me with just a 4-row planter and a little tiny tractor, but so all you need is a 35 horse to be able to pull that, and then I just mow in between. So I think with that, I'm going to turn it over to Latasha and Leah to talk a bit about our survey.
Great. Thanks so much, Dan. I just love your field, by the way. It is so green and lush. I'm kind of, where I am is a little bit arid, so that kind of scenery and landscape is not anywhere near me, so.
Come up and visit sometime soon.
Yeah. Tomorrow. But we got Leah. Thanks so much for joining us. We wanted to share some more information about the survey, just a quick another PSA. So Leah, do you want to go ahead and take the lead, and I could just share my screen on the Indian Ag website? Oh,
hi. Yeah, I got kicked off. Sorry.
all right. So yeah, we're on the website. I was just sharing some information about the survey and how important it is for us to hear the stories and challenges that producers all across Indian country are experiencing. So we released the survey, this batch of surveys about earlier this year, so that we could collect that really important data and information. If you visit our website at indianag.org/resilient, you'll be taken to this page. And from a TA standpoint, Leah, if you want to share again why this works out. Are you not able to hear me?
Oh no, I can hear you now. I just got booted off and I had to jump back on.
Oh, great. Go ahead and.
Okay, cool. So hi everybody, I'm joining you from Madison, Wisconsin, and I just want to talk a little bit about how important this survey is. We know that farmers all across Indian country are feeling the hurt of COVID-19, and what we're trying to do is gather all of that information, all of those stories, so we can amplify that to Washington and get better policy in place for you. So if you're a producer, if you're a gatherer, if you produce any kind of food products whatsoever, if you're a tribal leader, if you have a food hub, a co-op, a grocery store, there are separate surveys for each of those groups. If you fit more than one group, fill out more than one survey, and pay it forward and help us gather that important information so we can continue to serve you.
Great, thank you so much, Leah. And right now, if you would like to see the survey results, you can click just right below, there's a link, and you could see all the data that is being collected. So I could actually go to Utah and say, hey, AIF producer, I know you did not fill out this application, so go and do it. But it just is really important, again, for everyone's efforts, just and to advocate on your behalf, on behalf of Indian agriculture. So thank you so much, Leah. Thanks.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Oh, yes.
Thank
So,
you.
yeah, on top of that, we wanted to share, I know earlier on, Dan had made an announcement that we were going to do a drawing for a $200 gift card. So we still haven't reached our 20 survey participants yet. So, hey, if you're listening to tuning in on this tail end of the summit, go run over and submit a survey, and you'd be entered for a chance to win $200. So easy, easy. It's like 5 minutes, I swear. Great, thank you.
Okay, well, let's jump right into our panel here. Let's start off with introductions. Want to get started?
Oh no, sorry, I don't know if it was just my end or if you just broke up.
John, do you want to get us started?
Oh, I thought you said me. I was hoping you didn't, but
my internet's quitting on me.
I know, I saw that. Bonjour, Anachi Nikaragiwino, Mashu Sky Guide, Ho Chunkisha, good afternoon, everyone. First of all, thanks for having me on the show, and thanks for having me on so late in the day, because I was been busy all morning today. I'm John Greendeer, member of the Ho Chunk Nation, currently working for the Ho Chunk Nation as the Health and Wellness Coordinator. So I oversee the diabetes prevention programs, the exercise physiologists, the nutritionists, and I got to think of a better word than indigenizing, but we are transitioning and supplementing a lot of our dietary nutrition exercise programs to a lot of the more indigenous based type of diets and food systems. And so we're kind of blending both worlds. And so I really feel like we're at a kind of being propelled forward by some of the things, the effects of COVID-19, because there's such a high dependence on small gardening, traditional foods, even just learning how to prepare meats and wild game and things like that. People have a deep interest in that. So I think we're definitely going backward to go forward and get us through COVID. So I'm really enjoying my time at work now.
Aaron, do you want to go next?
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Erin Parker. I am the research director and one of the staff attorneys at the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative. We're based out of the University of Arkansas. We're longstanding partners of IC and big fans, and we're really excited to be here with y'all for the last panel of the Intertribal Food Summit. So thanks for having me on. If you're not familiar with our work, we are a bunch of lawyers mostly, and we like to say that our work is to put the tribal sovereignty and food sovereignty. We do a lot of legal and policy analysis for Indian country. We're the research partner to the Native Farm Bill Coalition, providing informational materials to intertribal partners like IC, to tribal leaders all across the country as they look for ways to use federal policy as a tool to cultivate food sovereignty in tribal nations across Indian country. So that's a little bit about us, but again, thanks for having me here today. I'm excited to talk with y'all.
Nicole, do you want to go next?
Oh yeah, sure. Sorry, I didn't hear you. Well, good afternoon, everybody. So exciting. This is the last panel, and just seeing everything that's been going on throughout the week and today. It's been really inspiring and exactly what we needed. So thank you, Dan, and everybody who put a lot of effort into this summit. Well, my name is Nicole Maria Llanes. I am from the Apata Nation, and I am currently in Nogales, Arizona right now, where I'm calling in. I work with the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance as a supervisor of the Food and Culinary Program. NAFSA is a co-sponsor of this summit, and we've been partnering with IAC and different tribes to host the intertribal food summits for the last couple of years or few years. And so I'm glad we were able to do it again this year in this way. I also work with the NDN Collective as a program officer, which I'll be speaking more about the efforts that we've been doing. It's an Indigenous organization with different entities and our missions to build the collective power of Indigenous peoples. And I've been working with the Intertribal Indian Treaty Council for the last 6 years as a food sovereignty program consultant, impacting international policies that eventually impact our communities.
That's awesome. Thank you, Nicole. I had sent my email invitation to Greg. So any confusion of people looking on the screen, we're going to go to Greg next. And Greg, for an introduction, I also just want to say I was getting pretty hungry hearing about food all day, so I pulled out some wall from Greg that I had and just cooked it up. I listened to the youth panel before that, and I know, Greg, you've had some kind of an interesting experience rights part of your resiliency within your community. So going to turn it over to you for an introduction, and if you want to just, as part of your introduction, could you talk a little bit about what happened earlier this spring?
Yeah, absolutely. So, bonjour. My name is Greg Johnson. My English name is Greg Johnson. I Ojibwe from the Lac du Flambeau Reservation in northern Wisconsin. And I am a hunter-gatherer. I'm a educator. I teach language and culture for our tribe. And I work at the public school here as well as the high school. And I have 3 kids, and I have 1 on the way. And so in our community, a lot of our men and women are hunter-gatherers, and we provide our elders and our community with what we harvest out there. We share what we take from the land, and so it's a big part of who we are, where I come from, and a lot of Native communities are like that. I'm learning that as I get more gray hair. We share a lot of similarities as far as taking care of our communities and being that way. We were gifted those ways from our ancestors long ago. So we strive to continue that type of lifestyle here on the reservation. But on the outside of our reservation, we have a pretty good sized reservation. It's 12 by 12. It's pretty good size, for this area. But when we go off the reservation, we run into a lot of people that are anti-Indian. They don't want us to spear, they don't want us to fish. And so already 4 times this year we've been shot at, but the last time we were on this lake, Little St. Germain Lake, which is probably about a good half hour from our reservation. We were out there spearing, me and another instructor friend of mine and a Beirut combat veteran. We were all in the boat, and we took some gunfire that night. We had some racial comments directed at us, and we took some gunfire that night. And it was a pretty scary ordeal, And in the boat with me was my friend Leon, and he's a veteran of the spearing controversy back in the 80s and 90s. So he's been shot at before. And then one of my relatives, his name is Carl Edwards, he was also in the boat as well, and he was a combat veteran. He was shot at as well. So those guys carry a little bit of trauma from what happened in the past, And so we were out on the lake, and we just left the landing, and we went off to the left. I said, don't go right, because that's where I got shot at last year. So we said, left is probably safer. So we went out left, and we took some fire over there. So as you had mentioned earlier, Dan, our resiliency is we continue to practice these rights that were given to us by our grandfathers and our great grandfathers. You know, they signed these treaties, and they paid with their life. Those treaties are signed in blood, and you know, we have to uphold our side of the agreement, which is hunting and fishing and providing for our families in that capacity. So, you know, when we run into that kind of opposition, we get fired at, we get rocks thrown at us, we get names. We have people slash their tires. We have people loosen the lug nuts on their tires, so our tires come off. You know, we've had it all happen, but we continue to do it. And the reason we do it is because, you know, we think of the ones before us. That death march from Sandy Lake all the way back to our homelands here. You know, we lost a lot of people, and those people, they paid their lives so we could have what we have today. And so, you know, we're not going to have anybody tell us how we're going to live our lives and how we're going to feed our families. We're going to continue to do it like our ancestors did long ago. And you know, my friend, I have a friend right here, Joe. We just got out of the bush. We went out and we harvested. You can probably see here a nice chunk of birch bark. And you know, that's we try to do cultural things every day, you know, and make our ancestors proud, make our people proud. We try to live off the land as much as we can, you know. And so those are the types of things that how we live, and those are the types of situations we get into once we go off the reservation. And you know, we've been under fire many times in our lives. A lot of tribal males and females from the community here, they know what it's like to have your life in danger, you know. And so after a while, you know, kind of, I mean, I shouldn't say this, you know, but after a while, you kind of get used to it. You know, you kind of get used to that pressure. You know, we're always looking behind us and around us to make sure it's safe, you know. And when we call each other warriors here on the Lac du Flambeau, that's what we really mean. That, you know, we mean that with the highest respect for each other, because we know what it's like to be hated on and to be despised for, you know, the gifts that our ancestors gave us, you know. And I think this is why these types of talks and these summits, and, you know, when we represent at our local schools and we get to our children at a younger age and we let them know, we let them see it, us live in our ways. That's why every tribal member in the United States should do something cultural every day. I was told that one time by one of our elders, do something cultural every day. If it's smudging, if it's spearing, if it's fishing, if it's gathering plants, using the language, doesn't matter what it is, you do that, you lead by example that way. And those kids that are watching us, they see that, and it becomes normal to them. Our neighbors see that, and outside the community, they see that, you know. And so when we live that way, we try to offer our a piece of our mind and our knowledge, and you know, and we got to remind everybody, you know, they're all on borrowed land. You know, that's a reality that we got to tell our neighbors. You know, you're living in our territory. This is our way. This is how it was long ago, and we have to say that. And you know, you think about what happened to George Floyd, and you think about all of these riots, and you know, people rebelling against what's happening. You know, everybody's had enough, and now I think it's a good time to say these things. You know, it's a good time to say that, you know, we're going to do what we're going to do, and whatever they do and whatever they think and however they react to what we do, it's not going to phase us, you know. And so we got to teach our young people that, continue to go out there and harvest and do those things, you know, because someday I'm not going to be able to go out in the woods and get those things. I'm going to have to rely on these young people, you know. And so we have to live our lives a certain way, you know. We have to put ourselves in that danger for now, and hopefully when all this stuff passes, and you know, that hate and that white supremacy that kind of goes to the curb a little bit. Hopefully it will, you know, but you know, we're not sure. we have high hopes for that, but we're not sure what's going to happen. And but we're going to continue to do that forever, until the sun doesn't shine like the way our ancestors wrote it on that tree. So we're very blessed where we come from, because we have a lot of people, like I said, we call warriors, that go out and they do those things. They put their life on the line to feed their families, and that's a reality we have to live in up here. And this is in the middle of America that's happening, So I'm glad, we get a moment to speak about these things and say these things. This is everything our ancestors fought for us. This is what it comes down to right here. How we live and how we do this. And we're not going to let anybody push us around, or we're going to continue to do it. And we can do it in a good way, or we can rock the boat too. So I think it's important to stand your ground. Stand your ground when it comes to your hunting and fishing rights. Don't let people in Washington, don't let anybody tell you that you can't do what your ancestors have done. That's the most important thing. You can't let any, and especially these colonizers and these berry pickers, they're up here vacationing, and they don't understand what it's like to, go through a rough winter, and they don't understand what it's like to, not be raised with a lot of money in your checking account. They don't understand that. All of us here, we understand that. So I think it's important that we share those stories, we share our traumas, and we share our being a victim. We need to share that with our other tribal members and our other tribal people from different reservations. And we make enough noise. Maybe somebody can take a look at what's going on, a realistic look. And I think it's time. It's time that it's such a wonderful feeling to see all these people interested in plants and medicines and foods and traditional harvesting and gardens and all that. It's like, that's how our grandparents were. We need, and when this pandemic hits, we're all good, we're all okay. And I know our friends to the south, the Ho-Chunks, and our friends out east, Odawas and the Potawatomis, they're all doing good. And the rest of the world, they can learn a few things from a little bit of what we know. Living that way. So I think
yeah,
Native communities have a lot to offer the world.
definitely. I know one of the questions that someone had sent in yesterday was kind of talking about basically like along the lines of a feast or famine, and part of the question was, in the times of famine, I mean, what does that do to help to really highlight what resiliency is, to highlight where do we need to really strengthen, where are some of our weak links, where do we need to strengthen our foundation. Nicole, I know that with NDN Collective that you've been very busy, your organization has been very busy of trying to provide some support of where there are some of those areas that need to be strengthened a little bit. Do you want to talk about the work that NDN has been doing? And feel free to connect to NAFSA as well.
Definitely. I mean, both organizations responded very rapidly to the current situation, knowing that our communities are underfunded, that our people have sometimes lack of resources, and that this pandemic hit us hard. So within NDN Collective, I'll start there. We designed a rapid response project to COVID-19, and we set our goal to fundraise $10 million, and we're close to it. We're almost to our goal. And we distributed resources to frontline workers, communities, individuals and organizations to get medical supplies, elder support, food, drinking water to our communities. And we supported over 100 organizations and tribes and entities within a month, very rapidly. And then there's different layers to that work that we did. And the next phase, for example, and then we did the artist and entrepreneur supporting with $500,000 small businesses, small indigenous businesses and artists who got impacted. Their income got impacted with shows closing and their stores closing, and so that they could stay alive and then thrive again, right? And then the phase 2, which is what's going to be coming up, is building this new normal, right? We see that our communities sometimes have income that's unsustainable, and that's going to be supporting tribes and organizations and folks doing this sustainable community, building sustainable communities and infrastructure, so that we are more prepared in the future for any challenges that come up. And so some of those are some of the projects that we did within NDN and that are coming up. But it's all tied to self-determination and just supporting our communities. And then we're partnering with CDFIs with a lot of organizations, over 25 organizations, and providing loans, right, and to our communities and entities. That's within NDN Collective. I don't know, do you want me to speak about NAFSA and what we have done so far?
Yeah, if you want to quickly touch on that, that'd be great.
Awesome. So NAFSA created a proposal a couple months ago when the pandemic had first hit, and within the ISKN, the Indigenous Seed Keepers Network, which you have seen some of the work from Rowan White, our director of the program, we started an Indigenous seed drive, and up to this point, we sent over 731 families and organizations seed bundles, over 700 bundles with over 10,000 seed packets. And then we sent 25 bundles of bulk seed to communities, and more. We connected a lot of communities with different seed banks or organizations to provide seed to communities. And so over 237 Indigenous nations received seed within the last couple months. And what's next is the Hope and Resilience Gardens. Right now, a lot of people have seed, and how do we grow and take care of this seed so that we build regional seed hubs, regional seed sanctuaries, or seed banks for our communities that are more local and regional for the next phase. And we're also looking into building our network and supporting farmers to grow seed for their community. So that's part of the regional seed sanctuaries that will be created. And that's just a quick recap of what we have done. And then of course the culinary mentorship program, just providing mentorship and opportunities, and we'll be also giving seed funding for food sovereignty projects here in the near future. And so we'll be doing a fundraiser for all those programs within the Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance coming up.
Great, thank you, Nicole. So now we're going to go to John, but I just want to kind of frame. John's going to be talking about some efforts at Ho-Chunk to implement the USDA food box program of distributing food. After John, we're going to go to Aaron Parker with the Indigenous Food and Agriculture Initiative, who's been actively working on several aspects of policy and including food distribution. So I want to go to John first to talk about of a tribe that's stepping up and getting a lot of food out right now. And then we'll go to Aaron to talk about some of that bigger picture policy work. So John, you're up.
Great. Again, thank you. As you know, the reactions from private business to government has been varied in terms of how they're going to respond to the efforts of COVID-19. You know, thinking about my brother here, Greg up north, you know, there was some part of me that was taking a look at this when prices started to go up and I started to really feel really proud of the lifestyle that I live in, you know, that I have corn, I have rice, I have meat. If I want more meat, I can go get it. I started kind of feeling a little chip on my shoulder that, you know, we know how to take care of ourselves. And I was really proud of our family and our lifestyle. But the something that's really important is that's not across the board in our tribal communities. That doesn't mean just because I'm Ho-Chunk that all the other Ho-Chunks can sustain themselves and take care of themselves that way. A lot of us weren't gifted with that or have the ability to do that. So in order for us to be able to maintain as a nation, we have to teach. We have to help each other. The things I don't know, I have to learn. The things that I do know, I have to teach. And So one of the main things regarding, this food box program, I think at the end of the day, people look at, hey, the Ho Chunk Nation has food boxes. There's so much more to that. It's really not about the food, more about the community that actually came together to make this happen, to feed a nation. So as we know, for tribes, a lot of the sustenance is the gaming revenue, and it runs our programs. It redistributes the finances out to our tribal communities and our non-tribal communities, because about 70% of the Ho Chunk Nation's workforce is non-tribal. So we have to look at our community as quite an inclusive bunch. Even our own homes are not 100% Ho Chunk. They may not be enrolled, or they may be mixed families, multifamily units. And so we can't simply just run a line of exclusivity and say, these are people we have to help. So a lot of people had recently lost their jobs. And so once they're displaced, I think that's the government term for that, displaced workers. And but they're out of a job, and they're not being able to pay their bills. And as the stimulus money runs out, or any other benefits are starting to run out, there are deductions and auto pays coming out of their accounts, and there's no money there. These are people that are just like any one of us, that appear like we got our stuff together, and then 2 weeks without an income, we're toast. Credit card bills start coming in, car payments start coming out, mortgages and rent start coming out, and we are in some shambles. And that's where I felt like a lot of us were. So one of the programs that we rely on from the USDA is our food distribution program, or as we call it in the Indian community, our Kamat program. And our Kamat program is really successful. It is income-based, and unfortunately, that income-based guideline is pretty rigid. And so people that are just recently out of work look fantastic on paper, look like they got everything together, but they don't have anything, and they do not qualify for those programs. And so a great majority, thousands of people that are now out of work for a tribe are looking to those sustainable programs to get them through this hard time, and they're not qualifying for it. So the mission of community health for the Ho Chunk Nation and the health and wellness program is to find out how we can either get a waiver for that, or capture that group of folks that are asking for help and not eligible to get it. And so fortunately, we ran into these nationally syndicated pantries and folks that actually have access. So what we find, and we've seen this in the media, of producers pouring out milk, or livestock going past their prime because they're not able to harvest or process them, and basically food going to waste. And so the government's response to that, for areas that are producing a lot of agricultural produce that would normally go to the schools or normally go to pantries, is, well, we'll offset the burden and we'll buy your products for you. We will buy your 16,000 gallons of milk that you're going to produce by the end of the week. We will purchase all of them. So now the government purchases a lot of the meat products, the produce, the mixed dairy, and they don't know what to do with it. So the USDA is sitting there going, what do we do with all this? So what we find here are two very important elements with a third missing link. We have the producers and growers, and we have the consumers that really need that. Now that missing link is the people in the middle, the forklift drivers, the semi-drivers, the warehouses, the cooling units, the administrators and coordinators, and the backs and the hands, and everyone coming together. That is the missing link in this whole portion. If you can find that somewhere, you can create that systematic food chain, that supply chain that is so important and critical. That is not readily available. Fortunately for the Ho Chunk Nation, who has been running a unique type of USDA Kamat program, where we have to provide those shares out to a number of different counties. The footprint is not nearly large enough to cover our entire community base, but it's fairly sizable, which means that we do have the trucks, and we do have the refrigeration, and we do have the supplies and forklifts and CDL drivers. We don't have them to that large scale, which is where we depend on the community. So what we were able to do is get in contact with the Hunger Task Force, and they actually coordinate the shares, and they're basically saying, how much food do you need? Now, I'm an office guy. I'm like practically incredibly lazy all the time. So I'm like behind a keyboard. So there's no way, like I can't do shop talk. I can't talk like warehouse people and say, I need 67 pallets, tomorrow. I have no idea what that means. So there's a learning curve that has to take place with coordination here and finding out that, this many units is going to be distributed overall. So with the Ho-Chunk Nation, we identified 11 communities that are varying in population. So we use, so we can math, I can at least math. And so I look at our population, our adult population in those communities, and I break our areas down into basically areas that have our shares, and we are able to divide these out in terms of an equitable distribution. So this, actually we can run that as the percentage, but this shows the percentage distribution, which actually determines the amount of supplies that we're going to get to each area. So when we get to each area for Black River Falls, who contain 28% of our tribal community population, we're able to move the 117 cases of assorted dairy combos to 117 boxes of milk. And so we actually need to be able to produce and distribute those. The next important thing is making sure that our communities actually know that we're going to be out there. So there is a big portion on marketing. That seems to be another missing link. You have to be able to project and have a voice large enough to reach the communities in order to get your products out there. And if you're out there talking to your own circles and saying, hey, we got food, you're going to sit there with truckloads of food that's going to go bad if you can't get people out there. So it does involve communication and marketing abilities. So what we've done, we don't have the 100 workers it takes for us to coordinate the distribution. So one thing that's great about a tribal community is you can call, they're your family, and you can give them a call and say you need help. And they will, if they can do something that makes them feel like they're doing something to protect themselves or their community from the effects of COVID, they'll be there. And they show in numbers. So we provide our own COVID screening, so making sure that they're temp checked, making sure that we go through the screening questions, making sure that every work area has kind of safe zones so that we're not overcrowding. We have them wearing gloves or masks. And so it doesn't make work that much more comfortable. But when we move, we are literally moving, 40 to 50 people. We have to date on week 4 moved over 17,000 boxes of food out to 11 different communities, which include Chicago, Minneapolis, and St. Paul, Green Bay, Milwaukee, Baraboo, to Toma, to Black River Falls. We've been able, La Crosse, we've been able to get just about everywhere. We've moved, I think as of Friday, just about 100 tons of food out to our communities. So we even drove up to go see Greg up and that's the nicest thing too, is it's not just Ho-Chunk community. If we have food or we have something, or if they have food, you call someone from their community, they'll organize really quickly and we'll get some food out there and get that shared out there. So they're doing a big solid for the producers and growers, because they need to move their products really quickly. So they are helping in this entire supply chain. So what we are also doing in terms of the marketing is we're also moving some media. We do these goofy little skits. I have no idea why people just really love them and look forward to them, because they're kind of silly. But we will actually do episodes of what's called What's in the Box. And I'm an editor as well. And we'll go through the program and we'll open up the boxes and we'll describe everything that's in the box. Fortunately, I work with a number of highly talented nutritionists. So we also not only try to provide some cultural learning in terms of language or what it's used for, but we also bring the nutrition factor in. And 90% of the food that we have fits with the My Plate schedules or the diabetes prevention program. So you're going to get produce, you're going to get fiber, you're going to get, good lean proteins, and we provide recipes. We recently hooked onto some pheasants as well. So that's kind of a new thing. So I said, geez, our people are probably going to be Kentucky frying some pheasants out there and missing out on, how to actually do it. But we're learning, we're enjoying where we all got our hands in. So again, if anyone thinks this is about food, come volunteer one time on a Friday and see what this is really about, because people are really happy to get their shares. They're lining up, and we can't say thank you enough to our coordinators over at the Hunger Task Force or Hunger Relief Federation, along with our producers from Gourmet Gorilla or GFS or now McFarland Pheasants. And then I guess, at the end of the day, when we get done, our freezers are full. They're going to be okay for a while. And so we also use this, I should mention this as well, Dan, is that because we have this mass distribution and we move, literally 20 tons of food out, we start at 10 o'clock on Friday. By about 11 o'clock, 90% of that entire warehouse of pallets is gone. It's already in the cars, in the refrigerators or homes of people. It is gone within that first hour. We're also using the opportunity to get PPE out there, making sure that folks have masks out there, making sure that they have gloves, making sure that they have diapers. We just had a massive load of diapers. Wow. And we also had some hand sanitizer that we made, and we sent out some surveys so that they can get assistance on their own. So we are using this vehicle to come to reach out to our communities. And I am happy to say that every one of our members of our council, our legislature, are out there as well, helping, handing out food, doing the things that, I really can't say anything bad about the whole situation because everybody's hands are in it. So again, it does take a lot of coordination, and it is something that kind of racks your brain. But on Friday, when you're driving home and you manage to sneak some chicken nuggets back to your family, you get really excited because you did something good, and that's what matters. We're going to move on and expand this. And Dan, we're going to be looking at you as well, because we need to be able to do this on our own. We need to be able to have our own food storage, our own, meat processing and cannery. And we need to be better prepared. If anything, COVID's taught us that where our vulnerabilities lie and what we need to have in place. And I think the best thing that we can do is get the really smart people that are out in the field every day doing this at the table, rather than the people that speak really well and get elected and have great ideas and nothing becomes of it. We need to start from the ground up and make sure that we have a sustainable food system, and I think we can with all the talent we have. So thanks again for allowing me to jump in on this.
Well, thank you, John. I think some of those numbers, it really the magnitude that we're talking. I just got a call from one of our other staff members today of one of the tribes out west, was awarded some funding to build a processing facility. So where do we start? Let's think, do we have any examples of tribes who have made this work? And luckily, we got Quapaw that has built a processing facility. We've got Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative who help to connect them with the resources and the knowledge of how to design it in a way that is, they had minimal issues with USDA on making it happen. But, connecting back to the numbers and why I see so much, we need this survey data. We need to be able to make and support the case to not just tribal leaders, but to leaders in Washington, D.C. And that's part of why we're collecting this survey data. The resiliency in agriculture this panel is focusing on is, how do we really build that supply chain? How do we build our production capacity, value added production? Just a couple of numbers real quick. $3.5 billion a year, according to the 2010 USDA Ag Census. That's how much sales we have per year. And I know that's an undercount because it's not accounting for a lot of the community oriented production. $3.5 billion a year. That's a big chunk of funding, but we're looking at $7 billion a year of food service going through our casinos. So, even under the most conservative estimates, we still have double the amount of sales going through our casinos and food service as we have total ag production. How do we help to capture that value-added production? Because even if we capture 10% of the livestock production, At $2 billion a year, that's $200 million a year that could be coming back and staying in our economies. You know, Aaron, I want to turn it over to you. IFIA has been doing a ton of work on all of this. I'm going to turn it over to you. If you could, at some point, touch on the 2018 Farm Bill, impact of Native Farm Bill Coalition, and what authority is in there, and what else have you been working on to help to build more of the capacity across the supply chain?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Dan. And thank you, John, first of all, not just for the incredible work that you're doing, but for like setting this up so beautifully, because like everything you said is what I think that we all hope every day, the big picture policy changes that we're looking at and doing analysis for and doing educational materials for tribal leaders and policymakers around. We hope that's what it does. Like when you said, like, it's not just the food box, it's the community coming together. Like I didn't leap out of my chair because it would have like destabilized my whole computer setup, but like I really wanted to like stand up and cheer, because like that's what it is. That's what the big picture policy stuff is really all about. It's the same. It's trying to figure out how we make policy responsive to the needs of Indian country and enshrine tribal sovereignty in policy, so that tribes have the flexibility within federal framework to take that trust responsibility and the federal funds that flow from it and do for their communities exactly what tribal nations have been doing since time immemorial. Figuring out what those links are between producers and growers in the community and connect all of those things and open those doors so that we do have these strong community connections that ensure food security and food sovereignty for everyone going forward. And a lot of the work that we do is really around that. Like I mentioned in my intro, we're the research partner at IFAI to the Native Farm Bill Coalition. The Native Farm Bill Coalition, just for anybody who isn't familiar, formed back in 2017 to look at ways that federal policy, specifically through the vehicle of the Farm Bill, which is the largest piece of federal legislation that sets agricultural policy for the whole United States, how we could use that to further the interests of Indian country in federal policy. By the time the 2018 Farm Bill was passed and signed into law in December 2018, the Native Farm Bill Coalition had over 170 member tribal nations. Nearly 80 tribal nations had passed resolutions and sent letters of support out to policymakers. Tribal leaders were flying into DC, talking to members of Congress, their congressional delegations, really educating policymakers on the largest scale I think Indian country had ever seen about what tribes needed in agriculture in terms of federal policy and ways that the law could change to open that up and allow tribes to do that work. By the time the bill was passed and signed into law, there were 63 tribal specific provisions in the final Farm Bill, which is really exciting. And I'm always like, I'll say that again because it was so exciting. 63 tribal specific provisions in the Farm Bill. It never happened before. It was unprecedented. And it was really a sea change for tribal interests actually having a voice on the Hill and being heard by policymakers and put into law in a way that enables tribal nations to do the work that John's doing right now, that all of you are doing right now. Not only from a governance perspective, but from an individual producer perspective. We saw tribes and tribal set-asides being included in programs like LAMP and PHOTO that open up market access opportunities, market promotion opportunities for producers. There's some traditional food specific language in the new LAMP program, for example. Things like that being included in federal policy. And like all of that was a massive amount of work from Indian country. Like Indian country's voice was really heard in this Farm Bill in a really robust way. And I think going forward, like what we're seeing right now, that change, along with the election of Native Congresswomen like Deb Haaland and Sharice Davids to Congress, we're seeing tribes being represented in federal policy, not as an afterthought, but just as a matter of course. Now, instead of seeing and having to educate policymakers about the need to include and tribes when you're saying state, local governments and the laws that they're passing, like the COVID relief bills that have come out, the tribes are just being included like now, like as they always should have been, right? Like as governments recognizing that. So that's been, I think, an exciting change that's come out of some of the policy stuff. But I mean, we've also seen what Congress has done in response to COVID-19 so far, tribes being included in that as well in some pretty specific ways when it comes to USDA, for example. A lot of my work centers around CMODS, or the Food Distribution Program on Indian reservations. I do a lot of my work is in that space and supporting food assistance programs and how we in Indian country is able to access those programs better and in a way that incorporates more traditional foods, more fresh fruits and vegetables, especially for FDIPR. So FDIPR got an extra $100 million in the CARES Act. I can't remember the name, you forgive me, I'm speaking in acronyms, I'm sorry. It's the most recent coronavirus response legislation. But that money went to 50 million additional for food purchasing and 50 million additional for facility improvement and upgrades. And that comes on the heels of a really exciting change in the 2018 Farm Bill, which was taking 638 authority and applying that to the very first time to USDA to enable tribal nations to do food procurement specifically for FDIPR. So a lot of the things that John was talking about, how do we do this long term? We do this on our own, we better prepare for the future. Those kinds of policy changes open that door because instead of having USDA be the arbiter of what your people are receiving in the FDIPR food package, the tribe gets to make that decision. To use 638 authority to say, you know what, like we have a couple tribal farmers here who are growing they're growing tomatoes or they're growing lettuce and we want to source that. Instead of having it come from somewhere else, we want that economic benefit to stay in our community and we want the food to stay in our community as well. So things like that I think are some of the exciting changes that we've seen, and that also opens up the opportunity potentially to have more traditional foods go through FDIPR as well. There are a few right now, and a lot of that has come from some pretty tireless advocacy by tribal leaders and FDIPR program managers really since the program started in 1977 to try to make sure that it's getting more culturally appropriate food to people who need it the most. But today there's wild rice, salmon, bison, blue cornmeal, lamb, mutton, and catfish. Those are the traditional foods in the food package right now, but it's a national package is the way it's designed right now. And as everybody who's listening to this knows, traditional foods are very specific to a tribal nation or to a region. So while bison may be delicious, it's not necessarily your traditional food. If you are from the Southwest, if you are from the Great Lakes area, that's not what's most culturally appropriate for you. So allowing these policy changes that put tribal nations in the driver's seat and respect that sovereignty acknowledging the role of tribes and being able to procure that food and do what's best for their communities and self-define. That's a lot of what we've seen, I think, come out of the Native Farm Bill Coalition, and some of the policy work that we have yet to do on the horizon is just continuing to advance interests like that, looking at how we take that 638 opportunity that's just a demonstration project right now, open it up more fully to FDIPR, open it up to other programs like SNAP, change, for example, the tribal administration of TFAP, which may be a problem, like John, that you were running into. I think you were talking about some of your local anti-hunger organizations like Feeding America. Like in the law, tribes are not an administrator of the TFAP program, which keeps tribal nations kind of out of a really robust administration of that. But a change in that law would make a huge difference.
And Erin, what is that program?
TFAP is the Emergency Food Assistance Program. Sorry, I did my acronyms again. If you're familiar with Feeding America, a lot of their programs are TFAP food banks. TFAP has been around for a long time. It does exactly what it says on the tin. It's an emergency food assistance program. It's meant to operate in times of crisis. Unfortunately, with the changes that have come to our food system over the last, I would say 100 years or so, for example, people rely on it kind of as a matter of monthly assistance. So like TFAP is like already overused and overburdened. And then when this pandemic hit, the usage of that shot up extremely. But if we could change that law and that policy to actually allow tribes to really directly administer that in much the same way as they do FDIPR, or even look at doing like a 638 opportunity for it so that it's like an actual full robust administration, then that would make a big difference, I think, in the food security network in Indian country. So. And
Erin, 638 refers to?
Yeah, 638 authority is, it's Public Law 93-638. It's the Indian Self-Determination Education Assistance Act of 1975. You know, it's a congressional situation because it's a very long name. That's 638 authority is the ability of tribal nations to either through self-determination contracts or self-governance compacts use federal funds to take over performances, services, functions, and activities of specific federal programs. So that those programs actually then run in a way that makes sense for that particular tribe. Initially when that law was passed in the 70s, it really only applied to like education and healthcare, but as of 2018, it applies to USDA in 2 places. One in FDIPR, the food procurement opportunity I mentioned, and the other in the forestry title. So that was a pretty exciting change. It was a big deal. We're still waiting for that to actually happen, but we're getting closer every day in the FDIPR space. And there is a consultation on July 15th. It's going to be a phone conversation since we're all kind of staying at home right now to make sure we're social distancing and taking care of our communities. So 2 to 4 p.m. Eastern on July 15th. I'm happy to share info on that with anybody. I can drop a link to the Office of Tribal Relations in the chat too. Please share that with your tribal leaders. If you're not on our mailing list at IFAI, we're going to be doing some preparatory materials, just some educational materials in advance of it if you want to share with tribal leaders, or if you've got anybody who gets a proxy from a tribal leader to join and speak on that, we'll have some info on it too, just to help. But that's a big overview, but did I hit
Thank
everything?
you, Erin. That's fantastic. And I know that you have a whole resource clearinghouse database on the Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative website, from webinars to the Model Tribal Food Code to different white papers to overviews of really surveys of what, you know, the state of tribal food and agriculture and the organizations that are doing work. So you know, it's no accident. It's not just a random occurrence that we have 63 tribally oriented provisions in the 2018 Farm Bill. It's from people understanding the policy and the law. You know, so I just want to thank you, Erin, for the great work that you and your whole organization is doing. And crazy, we're already at an hour here. I was dragging a little bit before, and I don't know if it was Greg's walleye or that taking that sip of coffee from earlier today, but or maybe it's just the exciting policy talk here. But I know I'm kind of awake and excited on this, but we do need to move toward wrapping up. And I want to give each of our panelists you know, just a minute or two to, you know, what do you think? What's your hope? What do you see? What do we need to do of 2 or 3 bullet, you know, of points of what do you think we need to do? And I'm kind of excited here. We have such a range in our panelists, from Greg and out there harvesting on the ground to Erin, you know, of doing this policy work and going up to Capitol Hill and helping represent. But I'm going to go back to Greg. A couple points. What do you think for resiliency? What do we need to focus on to help keep moving forward?
Well, I think, you know, education is definitely key. You know, we got to teach our people these different methods of harvesting and gardening, and the food programs. You know, the food programs that John was talking about earlier, and you know, those are some of the things that we need to educate our public on. You know, that they don't have to go hungry, they don't have to starve. You know, and they don't have to borrow money from their cousins. You know, there's actually programs in place for this. You know, where we can get these goods into the communities. You know, and then it goes back to our grandparents as well. You know, we have every one of our grandparents, they had a garden. You know, they knew how to live off the land. You know, and you know, that's our job. That's our job for our children and our job for our grandchildren. You know, we have to show that. We have to teach that. We have to lead by example. I think. Yep. And I heard one of the talks this morning. They talked about, you know, what are we going to do if we don't have this stuff in our communities? You know, and I think that's when, you know, as a nation, a native nation, we can reach out. We can help our brothers and sisters. There's things here that we didn't have before. We didn't have for maybe a century now. We have it back because of a brother or a sister tribe next to us. You know, shared a little bit of that knowledge with us. And I think, you know, those are some of the things that we have to do. We have to reach out and help each other again. And I think, you know, we're at a point in time where we can rely on ourselves. We don't have to don't really have to rely on anybody else anymore. We have the answers within. So I think, we just have to trust in ourselves and trust in our community. Yeah. So,
Great, thank you, Greg. Nicole, what do you think? What are a couple key things? What do we need to do to keep strengthening that resiliency?
Mm-hmm. I think as part of this transition and recovery, I think right now we're quickly responding to the situation, and that's what we've been doing. But how do we prepare to be prepared for the future and any challenges that come? And that's through supporting our seed keepers and supporting that network of seed keepers, so that we have those regional seed hubs and food hubs, and that our communities become have more food security, and we build our food sovereignty within scaling up the agriculture, creating our own stores, supporting businesses and producers and hunters and gatherers, creating the trade routes so that our tribes start trading again at a larger scale. We've seen it. You've done a lot of that work. I've done a lot of that work. I mean, I think as producers and as gatherers, it comes naturally. But how do we really create that infrastructure so that it's set up, and so that we don't have to be relying on a Walmart, we don't have to be relying on the 3 stores that are in the cities, and that the shortages are there. We don't have a sustainable food system within what is called the United States, right, or any country. But creating those sustainable food systems with our indigenous foods, and that includes supporting the producers, like I said, supporting the seed keepers, restoring the lands, and instead of investing in maybe non-sustainable economic structures and models, supporting the food production and food sovereignty within our communities.
Great, yeah, definitely agree. John, what do you think?
I don't get paid to think. But no, I think Nicole is absolutely right. I kept thinking about, I thought a common enemy would bring everyone together. I really did. I thought, whether you're conservative or progressive, we were all faced with the same thing, and found out that, a lot of division came, we exposed a lot of wealth gaps, class gaps, race gaps, and it's worse than ever on one end. And it's, for those of you who follow social media, it can make you sick, listening to some of the things that are going on. First of all, I think one of the best solutions is to pull away from that a little bit, because you're not going to win an argument. It's not worth it. It's a lot of unnecessary energy spent. The best energy spent is doing things, and as Nicole had mentioned, looking at our own economy. In our Western world, bigger is better, more is better. And we're always driven to create more efficiencies, to create more product. And we found out that people that were saying, well, we can't sacrifice our economy any further. Our economy is failing. Well, if your economy cannot handle a pandemic like this, then maybe you're subscribed to the wrong economy. Maybe bigger and mass production and mass capitalism is not the answer. Maybe it does come back to trade, and it might not be something that packs your pantries full, but it might be something that keeps you and your family or your community going for a little bit longer. With that as well, Greg had mentioned, teaching our folks how to do this as well, so that, they know how to feed themselves. These are things I strongly believe in, and become more and more affirmed that we need access to food and healthy food. And we also need to make sure that, my boss said something recently that just really sticks with me. She said, speaking from her role as a community health director, we build our enterprise on facilities so that people can come and get the help that they need, whether it's health, whether it's assistance, whether it's education. But now we're in a different situation. We are in a spot where we need to go to them as community members. A lot of people aren't going to come and pick up food. because they're proud or because they don't feel like, they deserve it next to someone else. But they do need it. And so going out and making sure that people have the supplies they need and doing that in a way that does not, victimize people that are in need of help is really important. I do believe that we need to come together and kind of put some things aside and go back to the most common denominator of human life, and that's just our well-being as neighbors, as family members, brothers and sisters, and develop a way to coordinate. And we do need leadership. We do a lot of leadership, and that's something that is lacking. There's people that want to do something that aren't going to step up to that role because it is, every time there's something positive, there's something negative waiting around the corner, and leadership does have to take some, hits to the helm. What Greg and his Nijis are doing up there is horrible as it is, and how much it hurts. It's doing something for the young ones, the next ones, because his fathers and his grandparents were doing the same thing. He told you that, so I think he's paving the way for resiliency, and that's probably one of the best definitions that we have here. So I think it's just a matter of getting folks together and seeing the quality of life in an indigenous economy, and it does work. It is unaffected by pretty much anything. It's kept us alive for thousands of years. It's going to keep us going as long as we remember to pass that down to the next generation.
Awesome. Aaron, last word. What do you think?
Yeah. Everybody said some really awesome stuff, so I would co-sign probably everything that everybody's already said. And I would also say, I think, just to build off of what John was just saying and what Nicole and Greg said as well, trying to just keep pushing and finding ways to open up federal policy to recognize tribal sovereignty, so that as you're putting those indigenous economies back into practice, they are left alone by outside regulation, external regulation, as a recognition of tribal sovereignty, and to get to the point where that's just a matter of course as well. Just like we're not even having to make that argument anymore, that people just understand automatically this is what tribal sovereignty is and means, and that tribes have been governing their people and taking care of their people and lands and natural resources for thousands of years and will continue to do so. I think that's one big thing. And also to use policy in a way that facilitates more intertribal connection too. I think a lot of the successes that we've seen during COVID-19 of tribal response to this, at least for us, have come from intertribal connections and people understanding that they're all connected to each other, and resource sharing, and making sure that across boundaries, people are fed and people have water during this time, people have healthcare during this time. So any ways that policies can support those two things, and to help support the next generation too, make sure that young people are involved and being brought along too, and know that they have a role and a voice in this. I think those would be my parting thoughts.
That's fantastic. I want to thank Indigenous Food and Ag Initiative. I'd like to thank Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance as our co-hosts on this event. I'd also like to thank Michigan State Extension and the Wisconsin Tribal Conservation Advisory Council. I'd like to thank University of Wisconsin-Madison as well for some of the content that was created. There's no way that an event like this works without a lot of people coming together. All of our instructors, we have, as I've mentioned a few times today, we have dozens of lessons on the Intertribal Ag Council e-learning platform that's on Mighty Networks. And really encourage people, get onto that platform. Apologize that it does have another step of, we do have a screening process. So in order to really try to keep it for tribal community members, but there's extensive information on there. We're going to be adding more workshops as we go, and we're going to be sharing some of those workshops that and those sessions that are on there. We will be sharing it out over the coming weeks. So, you'll be able to get access to some of that if you can't get onto to that platform. But as we conclude here, also want to thank, we've got Latasha Redhouse and Courtney Fisher that have been behind the scenes, and Latasha has been also helping to do a lot of the openings and introductions here. And we've been, and Elena Terry as well with Native American Food Sovereignty Alliance Kevin Finney has been helping too. A whole team has helped to pull this together. Definitely, it's not the same as being together in person, but it's been great to just be connecting with everyone throughout the week and the past couple of weeks. This content will be available. All the recordings are on multiple different channels, from ISC YouTube channel to the website to Facebook to the e-learning platform. So please check out all of that. And, you know, last plug, resiliency through agriculture. That's the topic of this title. We're sending out this t-shirt to all of the live speakers that we've had throughout the event. And if you want to get one of these t-shirts, go on to the IAC website, indianag.org/resilience, fill out that survey. In addition to this t-shirt, we're going to be doing a raffle for a couple of these t-shirts and gift boxes. So you want to try some of that product from our producer panel earlier. We'll be sending out those products. We're going to do 3 gift boxes going out to people who fill out that survey. And check back in. We'll be posting up all of the video. Latasha, do you want to just to give any last words?
Hey, sorry, it is definitely the afternoon over here in Utah, so kids are saying, where's dinner? As we're talking about food and all of this good stuff. But I really am impressed. As someone who's new to the Intertribal Agriculture Council, I've only been with them, well, I can't say only been, but I've been with them for almost a year now, coming up in July. But I am just so impressed by the connections and the partnerships and the support system. Again, with all of the different communities that are involved in agriculture, just seeing it as a bigger picture rather than kind of at a smaller community level. But I appreciate everyone's efforts, all of the team members on the back end, and everyone else. So I thanks, Dan. This is a really great experience, and I am excited to have participated at this level. But I'm looking forward to next year when you're hosting at your farm. Yeah.
Could be, or you know, so with Intertribal Food Summits, been a big focus with the Great Lakes region, but we've had some discussions of moving the event around. Just a real quick as we conclude of so with my job with Intertribal Ag Council, we hosted first regional summit that I was part of a Great Lakes Region Producer Summit at Oneida with the late Jeff Metoxen. We had about 35, 40 people at that one, turned into big National Food Sovereignty Summit, went back to a regional focus at Oneida in 2015 before moving it out, getting out of the casino, getting out of the conference center. And we went over to Gun Lake, Potawatomi, a couple of years there. And we had to bring our own team of chefs in. I know, Nicole, you were central in helping to make all of that happen. And we've been to Meskwaki and Pokagon, and down in Taos. Yeah, Taos was a fantastic one. But really the idea, let's get out of the conference centers, out of the casinos. I mean, we want to still support our tribal businesses, but let's make our food. Let's make this a holistic experience. And, kind of breaking that conference mold. And so the challenge with this virtual event is, how do we use this event to get people outside and off of their screens? I say that after sitting here on a screen for a long, it seems like days. It has been days, but take some of the workshops and go and do it yourself. We do have the Grower Challenge and the Rancher Challenge are both open through tomorrow. So, share some of what you're doing, out in the field. I encourage everyone here, go get outside, get some fresh air today, and come back and take a look at any recordings that you missed. It'll all be available. So thank you very much, everyone. And please travel safe. Most people are probably at home, but travel safe to the outdoors, and we'll see you soon. Have a good one.
Happy solstice.
Happy solstice.